What if the Earth itself was about to tear apart, and only a handful of people knew the terrifying truth? In 2012, natural disasters like never before shook the world, and a race against time began to save humanity. This is the story of one man who uncovered a secret that could change everything. Are you ready to face the end of the world? In 2012, a series of natural disasters occurred one after another, events unlike anything the world had ever witnessed before. These catastrophic occurrences were the result of a deep geological instability threatening to destroy the entire planet. While the world's most powerful governments secretly began preparing for their survival, an ordinary writer and devoted father, Jackson Curtis, stumbled upon the horrifying truth. He suddenly found himself caught in a race against time where not only his life was at stake but the future of all mankind hung in the balance. The story begins in 2009 when Adrian Helmsley, a prominent geologist, receives an urgent call that prompts him to travel to India. There he meets his astrophysicist friend who had been waiting for him. Their meeting takes them to the Institute of Astrophysics, into the building's deepest levels where temperatures are unusually high. Adrian uncovers a shocking scientific discovery. Something unprecedented was happening within Earth's core. The temperature at the core was rising rapidly to dangerous levels. The cause? A strange mutation in solar neutrinos. These particles, which were once thought to be harmless, had begun generating microwave-like effects directly heating the planet's core. To verify this theory, Adrian is taken to a specialized chamber with a water tank located more than 800 meters underground. There he witnesses the water boiling from the heat radiating up from the Earth's core. This undeniable evidence confirms that a planetary collapse isn't just a possibility, it's imminent. Adrian immediately heads to Washington with one mission: to personally deliver this information to the highest authorities. Upon arriving in the U.S., he rushes to a charity gala being held at the White House. But security stops him at the entrance simply because he's not wearing a suit. Desperate Adrian spots a familiar face in the crowd, Scott, an old acquaintance attending the event. He borrows Scott's jacket to blend in and manages to get inside. Navigating through the crowd, he locates Carl Anheuser, a high-ranking government official attending the gala. At first, Carl doesn't recognize Adrian and responds with sarcastic remarks about his sudden appearance and poor timing. Adrian introduces himself, stating he's part of the Office of Science and Technology Policy. Carl shrugs it off and says if it's that serious, Adrian should have gone through proper channels. Exhausted and frustrated, Adrian blurts out that he hasn't slept in 2 days and came all this way because what he discovered isn't just a report, it's humanity's survival at stake. Carl's demeanor shifts after hearing this. He takes the folder and examines the documents closely. As soon as he sees the scientific data, he realizes the magnitude of what Adrian is saying. Without wasting a moment, Carl tells Adrian to come with him to a more private place and orders a vehicle to be arranged for them both. He assures Adrian that he will personally inform the president. A year later, in 2010, President Thomas Wilson calls an urgent and highly classified meeting with the world's top leaders. He informs them that scientific analysis has confirmed Adrian Helmsley's earlier warnings. Earth is on the verge of a global catastrophe. The planet is now nearing a catastrophic tipping point, a stage from which there is no turning back. Immediate action is necessary. By 2011, plans begin to take shape to handle the coming devastation. A small group made up of some of the most influential individuals in the world gathers in secret to determine what can be done to ensure the survival of humanity. At the same time, another covert operation is put into motion. Its goal: to preserve the cultural and historical legacy of mankind. Priceless artworks, ancient monuments, and heritage artifacts are being quietly removed from museums and replaced with replicas. The originals are securely stored in high-security facilities so that if humanity survives, these relics can be part of a new beginning. Meanwhile, the general public remains completely unaware of the real danger. The media keeps them distracted with stories based on an ancient prophecy, the Mayan prediction of the end of the world. According to this ancient civilization, a cosmic cycle is set to end on December 21, 2012, bringing with it a global catastrophe. While many dismiss it as myth, the timing seems ominously accurate. The story now shifts to California, where we meet Jackson Curtis, a writer whose career never really took off. One morning, a minor earthquake jolts him awake. Jackson realizes he's lost track of time. He's already late to pick up his kids. Since he can't use his usual car, he's forced to drive a limousine he uses for work, chauffeuring a shady businessman with mafia connections. As Jackson heads out, he sees a crowd gathered around something unusual. The earthquake has torn open the ground, leaving a massive crack. While driving, he hears unsettling news updates on the radio. He passes a man standing by the road holding a sign that reads, "The end is near." Jackson finally arrives at his ex-wife's house to pick up his kids. The atmosphere is tense, especially with his older son who talks to him with visible resentment. Despite the friction, they all leave for a short trip together with a small sense of happiness. Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C., President Wilson's daughter Laura Wilson bursts into an important meeting, visibly disturbed. She reports that the director of the Louvre Museum has died under strange circumstances, eerily similar to how Princess Diana died. This deeply troubles her and raises suspicion about the organization she works for. The president explains that only a few people are aware of the real global threat and that a secret international emergency operation is already underway involving 46 nations working together behind the scenes. Carl, the high-level government official, takes Adrian outside the building and tells him he must now head to Yellowstone to continue the investigation. On the way, Carl delivers a subtle warning, taking a jab at Adrian's interest in the president's daughter, saying that this is a time for focus, not distractions. Back in California, Jackson and his kids arrive at Yellowstone National Park. But something doesn't feel right. There are helicopters flying around and the entire area is locked down with heavy security. Ignoring the warning signs, Jackson and his children enter a restricted zone. Once inside, they make a shocking discovery: the lake has completely vanished. Steam is rising from the ground and there are signs of dead animals in the area. Dead animals are scattered everywhere and there's an eerie silence in the air. In the distance, a man watches them closely, writing down every moment in what looks like a diary. Moments later, army soldiers arrive and detain them, taking them to a secret base inside the park. Meanwhile, Adrian is with another scientist who shows him terrifying data. Temperatures recorded at depths of 12,000 meters have reached as high as 2,700 degrees Celsius. This thermal rise is not normal. It's clear proof that the planet's geothermal system is no longer under control. Things are deteriorating much faster than expected. While Helmsley is still discussing the dangerous thermal data with his colleague, a team member rushes in and reports that a group of tourists was caught trespassing inside Yellowstone's restricted zone. Adrian immediately decides to speak with them personally. He enters the base and meets Jackson Curtis, who is visibly angry and demanding answers. Calmly, Adrian explains that this is no picnic spot. This area has now become a geothermal danger zone. The disappearance of the lake they saw is just a small visible sign of a much bigger problem. The real threat lies underground, where everything is spiraling out of control. He gives Jackson a clear warning: if you care about your family's safety, leave immediately. But as Adrian reads Jackson's ID and sees his name, he's taken aback. "Jackson Curtis? You're that novelist? I've read one of your books. It was pretty deep." This small recognition sparks a brief soft moment between the two strangers, a tiny connection formed through a shared human moment. The scene shifts to India, where the same scientist who had first detected the abnormalities in Earth's core sends an urgent message to Adrian. The temperature has now crossed the critical limit. The mine has been sealed and the calculations were spot on, no mistakes. The Earth's crust is beginning to break apart. Adrian, now deeply concerned, says in a serious tone, "We need to start global evacuation now." But despite all these warnings, the Curtis family decides to stay at the campground. They still have no idea that the world around them is about to collapse. That evening, the strange man appears again. Charlie Frost, a quirky radio host known for his bizarre ideas. Laughing, he tells Jackson not to believe what the army says. The real truth is something else entirely, he insists. Later that night, Jackson's younger son refuses to call him Dad. Frustrated, Jackson takes away his phone and silently heads out. After a while, he turns on the radio and hears Charlie's voice on a live broadcast from his trailer. Charlie is warning everyone that the end is near. He claims the Mayans had predicted all of this long ago and Yellowstone is going to erupt as a massive volcano. Curious, Jackson decides to visit Charlie's trailer. Charlie invites him inside and shows him a wall covered with old newspaper clippings and handwritten theories about the end of the world. He even has a blog where he writes that everything is about to change, and only a few people will survive. Inside Charlie's trailer, Jackson's eyes fall on a familiar name, a NASA scientist he had worked with while researching for one of his novels. Jackson is shocked to discover that the scientist he once worked with is no longer alive. Charlie tells him that his death wasn't an accident. He had learned too much of the truth and was silenced. Charlie then shows Jackson a confidential map, one that the scientist had sent him before his death. It marks the location of a secret site where massive ships are being built, ships designed to save only a select few when the world starts to collapse. Jackson's expression turns serious, but he still finds it hard to believe everything. He thanks Charlie and prepares to leave. As he's about to go, Charlie gives him a final warning, this time with complete seriousness. Get your kids out of Yellowstone immediately. This is where it will all begin. The next morning, Jackson takes his kids to a local store to get medicine for Lily's insect bites. Meanwhile, his ex-wife Kate is out shopping with her new partner Gordon. While walking around, Gordon casually suggests, "Let's have a baby." Kate instantly says no, creating tension between them. The conversation shifts back to Jackson, the man Kate left, or maybe never truly did. But suddenly the ground begins to shake violently. A massive earthquake hits, tearing a giant crack through the city and plunging everything into chaos. People scream and panic fills the streets. Inside the store, Jackson and his kids watch the breaking news reports on the TV screens. The fear and confusion are clearly visible everywhere. Lily's schoolteacher comments on the situation, visibly shaken. Then Nova's phone rings. It's her mom, Kate, urgently telling her to come back home immediately. Meanwhile, President Wilson is now visibly distressed. Karl Anheuser informs him that the Arks are ready and evacuation must begin. These Arks aren't military ships. They're futuristic, ultra-secure vessels that can save only 400,000 people. Compared to the entire world's population, that's a painfully small number. But those chosen to survive are the ones considered essential for the continuation of the human race. President Thomas Wilson doubts the morality of the plan, but deep down he knows there is no other option left. Karl insists that boarding must begin immediately. An emergency meeting is then called with the world's top leaders. Adrian Helmsley presents the data and everyone's faces go pale. He says, "We have just 3 days left. After that, everything ends." The room goes silent for a moment. Then President Wilson rises and says firmly, "We must act now. No one has time to waste." The decision is made. The global evacuation protocol is officially activated. Shortly after, the selected individuals and those who had bought their spots receive exact instructions. Back in California, Jackson receives an urgent call from his boss, who tells him to leave immediately and take the kids with him. During their journey, one of the kids becomes upset with Jackson. When Jackson steps out of the car, his suitcase accidentally bumps into the vehicle. The boy, frustrated, blurts out that his family has tickets for the Arks, meaning they are guaranteed to be saved. This hits Jackson hard. He feels a surge of unease. In that moment, Charlie's warnings come rushing back to him. Jackson decides to listen to the radio again, this time with a different mindset. He's ready to believe. Out of fear and urgency, he rents a small plane and gives his watch as payment. Then he calls his ex-wife and tells her to get the kids ready immediately. She hesitates at first, but another powerful quake forces her to listen. Once again, they all reunite and race off in the limousine. As they speed away, the full scale of destruction unfolds around them. Neighborhoods start to break and collapse. Roads begin to crack open, large fissures appear in the ground, and buildings around start falling. After running quickly, they manage to reach the airport. Gordon is there, someone with no experience flying a plane, but still he takes control of the aircraft. They successfully take off just as the runway behind them begins to break apart. They narrowly avoid debris cars and a train sliding uncontrollably due to the city's failing infrastructure. Despite all this, they manage to survive. Meanwhile, on a luxury cruise ship, Adrian's father is enjoying an evening, completely unaware of the chaos unfolding in the world. Then his son calls and tells him that the world is truly ending. The man had some inkling before, but even so he accepts his fate calmly and says a loving goodbye. Back with Jackson, they land on a runway that is still operational. Jackson immediately runs to find Charlie with his daughter Lily following him. They find the trailer empty but locate Charlie on a nearby hilltop, transmitting on his radio. Jackson asks Charlie for the Map to a safe place. Without hesitation, Charlie gives the location but decides to stay behind, wanting to witness the end of the world with his own eyes. Suddenly Yellowstone erupts without warning. The ground rises rapidly, new mountains form and huge cracks appear beneath the Earth's surface. Jackson and Lily barely escape. In a dangerous moment they jump over a large fissure. Jackson goes back to the trailer to grab the map, and just as the trailer sinks into the ground, everyone thinks he is dead. But he emerges at the last moment with the map. The family boards the aircraft again. Adrian and Carl watch on TV as reports say the earthquake has claimed over 2 million lives. Chaos spreads worldwide. Looting and madness take over and fear grips humanity. Then a colleague rushes into the room with urgent news. Yellowstone has been destroyed and its poisonous ash will reach Washington in less than 7 hours. They must evacuate immediately. Adrian and Carl set out to find the president. They meet him quietly praying inside a church. The president wants to speak to Adrian alone. In this calm conversation, Wilson reveals his decision to stay. He says the future belongs to those with the necessary knowledge, not to the old politicians. He acknowledges his fear and the heavy responsibility on his shoulders being the world's last president, and wants everything to go right until the very end, even if it means risking his own life. Meanwhile, the White House staff boards Air Force One under emergency protocols. But when the question of the president's absence arises, Adrian reveals that the president will not board the plane. This sparks an argument with Carl, who finally reveals that the government has been removing anyone aware of the impending disaster. Adrian realizes that if he had spoken up sooner, his father might have suffered the same fate. A little later, the president's daughter calls Adrian, trying to convince him of her father's decision. Wilson explains that his purpose is to tell the truth to the world so every family can say their last goodbyes to their loved ones. At the airbase, everyone meets Yuri, who is Jackson's boss. One of his men brings a plane, but now they urgently need another pilot. Jackson says that Gordon can fly the plane. Gordon hesitates a bit, but since there is no other option, everyone agrees that they have to leave immediately. They board a large cargo plane filled with expensive cars brought from Las Vegas. Meanwhile, a thick hot smoke moves rapidly toward them, forcing them to take off immediately. The control tower denies permission to take off, but the smoke is so close that stopping is impossible. They take off. Initially, the plane shakes and seems to be falling, but Gordon manages to stabilize it. The plane almost crashes into a building but manages to take off just in time. Now, while airborne, they get an update that their next stop will be China. This news brings some relief to the families on board, but the pilots face another problem. The fuel is very low. They decide to stop in Hawaii to refuel the plane. However, upon arrival, they are shocked to see the island completely burned down by a volcanic blast, making it impossible to get fuel there. With no other options left, they plan an emergency landing near the coast of China, but the distance is so great that they might have to land in the ocean. Amid this tension, Adrian reassures the president's daughter, reminding her that she did a good job saving art and culture. He also mentions a writer who was not very popular but whose stories survived. Back at the White House, the president is taking care of a few remaining people when a massive earthquake strikes. A large structure collapses on them, and since then contact with Air Force One is lost. Now Carl has taken command and is responsible for every decision and order. Thousands of people pray at the Vatican, asking for their lives to be saved. Suddenly, a huge earthquake hits and the largest building there completely collapses. Everything is destroyed, leaving only fear and silence. In the presidential plane, an alarm sounds. A signal shows that the Earth's crust is shifting again. A scientist warns that if this movement stops, massive tsunamis will follow that will sweep everything away. Meanwhile, Jackson tries to find radio signals, hoping to get some contact. His ex-wife asks him if he thinks people can change. Jackson is surprised and feels this question is directed at him. Then she vents her anger, accusing him of prioritizing his writing career over his family. Jackson asks her if she loves Gordon, and she answers that she loves him only as much as necessary. On the other hand, scientists on the presidential plane make another terrifying discovery. The Earth's crust is still moving, meaning tsunamis are a global threat. They also get a shocking update that the North Pole has shifted to the location of Wisconsin. At this moment, Jackson and his group traveling in the aircraft have to make an emergency landing. Everyone fears they will crash into the sea, but they see new land beneath them that has recently surfaced. Thury's bodyguard tells Gordon, "You guys go, "I'll handle this." He manages to reduce the crash impact and somehow the plane lands safely. All the passengers disembark and use the luxury cars inside the plane for protection. The aircraft reaches right to the edge of a cliff and finally crashes down. The bodyguard goes down with it. Yuri's girlfriend Tamara is devastated by his loss. She breaks down crying as she watches everything end before her eyes. A little later, a Chinese aircraft flying overhead is carrying animals to an arts facility to save them. From above they see some car lights below and immediately land to investigate. However, they only help those who have official passes. Yuri and his children have passes, so they are taken to a helicopter, but Tamara is left behind. Before boarding the helicopter, Yuri bluntly tells her, "I know about your affair with that bodyguard." Meanwhile, the presidential plane lands at the Treasury complex. There it is found that one structure has been damaged by the earthquake, specifically Ark number 3 is no longer usable. Yuri is already frustrated and angry because of the delay and gets into an argument with security personnel. The situation escalates so much that the guards threaten to arrest him and try to remove him from the area. Jackson's family gets a truck arriving from a distance inside the complex. Adrian raises a question about how people were selected. Carl explains that the selection was based on genetics and wealth, and the entire system was designed for those who could pay. Adrian sees the rooms in the Ark and angrily says, "This huge space is empty. Each room could fit 10 people. How many lives could have been saved?" A little later, Adrian receives a last call from his scientist friend in India who says his helicopter never made it there and that a tsunami is about to hit. Adrian sadly says goodbye and goes to the control room where he sees several continents already submerged underwater. When Carl angrily asks why rescues are not happening, Adrian, clearly distressed, explains that many missions have already failed and chaos is everywhere. Suddenly a massive wave is detected which is expected to hit in just 28 minutes. At the same time, Jackson, his family, and Gordon reach an entry point where the guards refuse to let them in. But after hearing Jackson's ex-wife, an elderly woman's heart softens and she convinces the guards to allow them inside. When they see the oxygen tanks, they realize that these are not spaceships as they were told, but huge ships. They pass through tunnels until they reach a vault just before it closes. Outside, the situation is completely out of control. Chaos is everywhere and many people are unable to get inside. Tamara, in the last moments, enters with her dog. As she leaves, she looks at Yuri and their eyes meet. Tamara makes a gesture that carries a feeling of revenge. Seeing the desperation of the crowd, Adrian requests that communication channels be opened to talk to representatives of all nations. He explains that to save more people, the floodgates must be opened. 15 minutes after the impact, permission is finally granted. As soon as it happens, a small celebration breaks out among the crowd. Curtis and his group reach the gear area located below the animal cages. As the floodgates begin to open, the shaking machines cause Gordon and another man to fall. Jackson rescues the injured guard but unfortunately cannot save Gordon. A pipe gets tangled, preventing the floodgates from opening fully. Still, people start going inside. Yuri safely sends his 2 children inside but slips and falls into the water himself. John sees that Jackson and his family are still trapped in the lower area. Only 1 minute remains before the impact, so the engineers were immediately sent to help them. As soon as the wave hit the structure, one part of the Ark started filling with water. Time had run out, so Curtis was urgently called to fix the mechanical problem. With the help of his son Noah, he found the tangled pipe and removed it. Then he closed a door to stop the water. Just in time, this saved everyone inside the Ark. However, the Ark collided with a mountain that was visible even though it was underwater. The impact was so strong that Jackson was knocked unconscious. His son was also injured and everyone feared the worst. A little later, when Jackson regained consciousness, there were smiles mixed with tears in everyone's eyes. Happiness spread everywhere. It had been 27 days since the beginning of the new year, and by then everyone inside the Ark had started rebuilding their lives. Adrian had grown closer to the president's daughter and had expressed his feelings to her. It was the beginning of a new journey. The captain announced that the weather had cleared up and everyone could go to the platforms. For the first time, Jackson finally spent time with his family, feeling deeply grateful that they were all alive together and safe. Helmsley was informed that the water level was now receding, and the biggest surprise was that the highest point on Earth was now in Africa. So the Arks were heading there where a new era of humanity was about to begin.